It's exactly 7 days away from the presidential election, and the major contenders spent the day preparing for their third and final debate this evening. Consumer sentiment in May significantly recovered after about 4 years, in part due to a pause in new U.S. tariffs and expectations for a new administration in Korea. Israel continues pounding Gaza, killing dozens of people at a school-turned-shelter, while much-needed aid starts trickling into the enclave. It's May 27th, 7 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We're coming to you live an hour earlier than usual before the live presidential debate. Exactly 7 days from now, voters in this country will be heading to polling stations to elect the next leader. With the big day coming up, the final debate is scheduled for this evening. Major candidates spent the day keeping a low profile ahead of the debate, though efforts did continue to muster support as much as they can. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
With 1 week to go until the election, presidential hopefuls scaled back their campaigns ahead of their final televised debate on Tuesday evening. Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung did not hold any rallies on Tuesday, choosing instead to focus on preparing for the debate. Meanwhile, the DP encouraged people to participate in early voting, which begins on Thursday. Highlighting the record-high turnout in overseas voting, the party said this reflects public sentiment against what it calls insurrection forces. It added that it plans to maintain this momentum through early voting. The party also continued its criticism of People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo.
Every time he speaks, it's all false propaganda and misleading agitation. He's a dangerous person. To him, honesty is just a mask, and morality is nothing more than a prop.
The PPP's Kim Moon-soo has been putting in efforts to rally as much support as possible from across the political spectrum, including undecided voters ahead of early voting. Kim met with former President Lee Myung-bak over lunch on Tuesday in what was seen as an effort to consolidate support among conservative voters. A PPP spokesperson told reporters that Lee encouraged Kim and advised him to make a sincere effort to pursue a merger with the Reform Party's Lee Jun-seok. This comes a day after Kim met with former Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun. Following the meeting, Lee, a former chief of the DP, voiced his support for Kim on Tuesday, saying that he would join efforts to prevent what he called a monster dictatorship if Lee Jae-myung were to win the election. With 2 days to go until early voting, the PPP expressed confidence in a major comeback.
Kim Moon-soo's character and abilities stand in sharp contrast to Lee Jae-myung's, leaving a strong impression on voters. A major turnaround is coming.
Meanwhile, Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok reaffirmed his determination to stay in the presidential race, rejecting a merger with the PPP. During a press conference on Tuesday, he said he would not join forces with those responsible for the declaration of martial law and that he would fight to the end and win. The third debate between the candidates will take place from 8 p.m. this evening and last for 2 hours. They will discuss political polarization, political reform, and possible constitutional amendments. Other topics will include foreign affairs and national security. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, tonight's debate will also cover issues related to defense and diplomatic strategies. And ahead of that discussion, our Kim Jong-sil takes a look at where the three major contenders stand when it comes to foreign policy.
In the final stretch of the presidential race, foreign policy may not be driving the race at home, but outside South Korea, eyes are on how the next president will navigate the situation on the Korean peninsula. Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung favors a pragmatic, multi-layered strategy. His foreign policy centers on a strong ROK-US alliance while expanding diplomatic engagement with China, Japan, and Russia.
With a strong RK-US alliance, I'll lead a pragmatic, national interest-based diplomacy to expand South Korea's global role and secure lasting peace.
He also backs the return of wartime operational control from the current U.S.-led command structure to South Korea and phased nuclear talks with the North. By contrast, People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo takes a tougher line. He argues that in a region surrounded by constant threats, diplomacy must be backed by credible deterrence.
If the U.S. forces were gone, how would we deal with China? With North Korea, how would a divided nation like ours, surrounded by Japan and Russia and facing the worst geopolitical conditions ever, handle the North's nuclear threat?
Kim also supports reviewing tactical nuclear deployments if North Korea's threats escalate. At the same time, he backs developing nuclear-powered submarines to counter North Korea's SLBM-capable subs, citing India and Australia as precedents. Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok has yet to lay out a full foreign policy platform, but his defense proposals focus on internal reform, expanding officer recruitment through conscript performance, and linking military service to academic support. With global uncertainty mounting, South Korea's next president will be expected to act swiftly, whether through alliances, deterrence, or reform. And with just a week left before the vote, the country's foreign policy future remains wide open. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
To follow up on that, our correspondent Kim Jong-sil joins us in the studio. Jong-sil, as you compared policy positions between the candidates in your report, was there anything worth noticing? What can you tell us in detail?
Jung-min, well, I want to highlight the thing that despite the differences in their political differences, and while they vary in emphasis and detail, all three candidates share a common focus on the ROK-US alliance and support the idea of resuming dialogue with North Korea. Now, let's start with Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung, who unveiled his foreign policy platform just yesterday. A notable shift in his approach was his approach toward North Korea, which seems more cautious than that of previous progressive administrations. While former President Moon Jae-in emphasized engagement, Lee is focusing more on practical progress, particularly on the nuclear issue. Some analysts link the shift to changing global dynamics and renewed uncertainty over U.S. policy toward Pyongyang under President Trump.
So that was on the liberal side. Now, what about Kim Moon-soo on the conservative side?
Well, Kim takes a more defense-first approach, calling for a stronger military coordination with the U.S. and raising the idea of tactical military nuclear deterrence. One thing that stood out from his campaign was his response to how South Korea should balance between the U.S. and China. He rejected the idea, saying it could lead to mistrust from both sides. While recognizing the value of economic ties with China, he also emphasized the need to avoid overdependence through supply chain resilience and trade diversification. He has also expressed interest in meeting President Xi Jinping at this year's APEC summit.
And what about Lee Jun-seok, another conservative-leaning candidate?
Well, he hasn't laid out a full foreign policy plan, given that possibly due to this being a snap election, but his recent remarks point to a broad, future-oriented approach. Now, last month, he proposed space and technology cooperation with Japan, citing the potential for synergy through shared infrastructure. He also said he would suggest a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un without preconditions. We'll likely hear more from him and the other candidates in tonight's televised debate.
All right, a lot to watch out for. Thank you, Jong-sil.
Thank you.
Findings for the month of May show Korea's consumer confidence significantly regaining strength due in part to a pause in new U.S. tariffs and expectations for the next administration in Korea. Park Jun-han has the latest figures.
South Korea's consumer sentiment in May saw its largest increase in 4 years and 7 months. The Bank of Korea released on Tuesday the country's Composite Consumer Sentiment Index, which reflects consumers' views on the state of the economy. Rising by 8 points from April's 93.8 to 101.8 in May, the index recorded its strongest one-month gain since October 2020. A CSSI above 100 indicates optimistic consumer sentiment compared to the average of the last 20 years. For the past 5 months, the index has remained below 100. However, as the index in May surpassed 100, it signaled a shift from pessimism to optimism. The index's 6 elements, including current living standards and prospective household spending, all saw a rise in May, with prospective domestic economic conditions rising by 18 points compared to last month. Among the various components, several indicators pointed to a rise in optimism. This shift is likely tied to the 90-day suspension of reciprocal U.S. tariffs that helped ease some concerns over global trade uncertainty. Also, expectations surrounding the new administration's economic policies after the upcoming election, along with anticipated progress in South Korea-U.S. tariff negotiations, contributed to the boost in consumer confidence.
The domestic political uncertainty will be resolved with the presidential election on June 3rd. It's also true that the tariffs aren't as severe as they were initially stated.
Meanwhile, prospective housing prices in May recorded 111, 3 points higher than last month. The outlook for housing prices has been rising for 3 straight months, as more people expect further increases due to continued apartment price hikes in the metropolitan area. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Turning to a major war happening elsewhere, Israel continues pounding Gaza, killing dozens of people at a school used as a shelter. Meantime, aid is trickling into the enclave after a month-long blockade. Choi Ji-hee has the latest.
On Monday, a school-turned-shelter in Gaza City's Daraj neighborhood was one of the 2 targets hit by an Israeli airstrike. Hundreds of people, mostly women and children, were sheltering there at the time.
This isn't normal. What kind of missiles are they dropping? What are they doing? I don't understand. All of them were children. The 3 children were burned along with their mother.
According to Gaza's civil defense, the attack, which reportedly occurred while occupants were sleeping, killed at least 36 individuals and injured dozens of others. The Israel Defense Forces said the strikes targeted a Hamas and Islamic Jihad command and control center, believed to be operating within the school premises. They asserted that the facility was being used for planning attacks against Israeli civilians and troops. However, local witnesses and Palestinian officials have denied the presence of militants at the site.
There is no military in it. There is not even a piece of a weapon in it.
In a separate strike, 16 people were killed when the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza was hit. The attacks have drawn international condemnation, including from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who cautioned against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu taking excessive military actions. Merz said he no longer understands what Israel is trying to achieve. Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister said legislation for a potential ban on imports from Israeli settlements would be unveiled on Tuesday. Also on Monday, a new aid system in Gaza backed by the U.S. opened its first distribution hubs, following months of being blockaded by Israel. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has taken over the handling of aid, and truckloads of food delivered to its hubs have begun to be distributed to Palestinians on the same day. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Amid an alarming escalation in the size and scope of Russia's aerial assaults in recent days, Germany is removing range restrictions placed on weapons provided to Ukraine. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Germany has joined other Western supporters of Ukraine in removing range restrictions on weapons being delivered to Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz on Monday announced that his country will be joining the likes of the United States, the UK, and France in lifting the restrictions in order to allow Ukraine to be better able to hit military targets on Russian territory. Merz says while there will be opposition from some EU member nations, including Hungary and Slovakia, it won't stop Germany and other bloc members from their continuous support of Ukraine. The German chancellor also said a small minority could not be allowed to determine the decisions of the entire European Union, and that by removing restrictions on weapons, Ukraine can now defend itself by attacking military positions in Russia. In response, Russia called the decision dangerous, saying it would be detrimental to any chance of a peace deal, with Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Monday saying such decisions are completely at odds with any hopes for a political settlement. The Western allies of Ukraine had initially restricted the use of long-range missiles to targets only within Ukrainian territory under Russian occupation. However, after the dispatch of North Korean troops to the Kursk region, the U.S. and the U.K. began authorizing the use of long-range missiles to strike targets in Russia. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In the UK, dozens of people, including children, were hurt after a British driver rammed his minivan into football fans celebrating Liverpool's Premier League title. Authorities are investigating the incident as they do not treat it as terrorism. Lee Eun-jin has the details.
On Monday evening, Liverpool fans came out in the tens of thousands to celebrate the team's Premier League victory. As the parade was wrapping up, a minivan drove into a crowd of fans on Water Street in Liverpool's city centre just after 6 p.m. local time, shortly after the bus carrying the Liverpool team had passed by. The vehicle struck several pedestrians before coming to a stop. A video on social media showed the van strike a man, tossing him in the air. Ambulance officials said that 20 people were treated at the scene for minor injuries, while 27 were taken to the hospital, including 2 with serious injuries. At least 4 children were injured in the collision, and 4 people were trapped under their vehicle and had to be released by firefighters. The police said they believed it to be an isolated incident as they arrested the driver, a 53-year-old British man, at the scene. Authorities are not treating the incident as terrorism, but are investigating what led to the incident and have asked people to refrain from sharing distressing content online. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer described the incident as appalling and said those injured and affected are in his thoughts. Liverpool City Council leader Liam Robinson said on social media that the incident cast a very dark shadow over what had been a joyous day. Liverpool FC also posted on social media that their thoughts and prayers are with those who have been affected by this serious incident. Lee Eun-jin, Arirang News.
In the fresh threat against Harvard University over its campus policies, this time U.S. President Donald Trump suggested taking away grant money for the university. An Sung-jin has the latest.
The feud between the Trump administration and Harvard University continues to escalate. Trump posted on his social media, Truth Social, on Monday that he is, quote, considering taking $3 billion of grant money from a very anti-Semitic Harvard. He said he would redirect the $3 billion in federal grants to trade schools instead. Trump had previously cited concerns over anti-Semitism on campus for freezing $2.2 billion in grants. How Trump is to redistribute the funds and whether the grants come from the funding that he already froze is unclear. His latest remark comes after he demanded Harvard to release the name and nationalities of its international students, and comes less than a week since a judge halted the Trump administration from barring international students enrolling at Harvard. The Ivy League school had previously argued that the administration's actions were a blatant violation of the First Amendment and comes as the university opposes the government's demands to control Harvard's governance, curriculum, and the ideology of its faculty and students. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
RM, the leader of the South Korean boy group BTS, has been named as the winner of the Favorite K-pop Artist Award at the American Music Awards. Widely regarded as one of the most influential music award shows in the U.S., alongside the Grammys and the Billboard Music Awards, the AMAs returned this year after a 3-year hiatus. The 2025 ceremony was held on Monday local time at the Fontainebleau, Las Vegas, and was hosted by pop icon Jennifer Lopez. The Favorite K-pop Artist category was introduced in 2022, with BTS receiving the inaugural award.
Early summer is here already across the country. Areas shown as yellow on the map exceeded 25 degrees Celsius today. It rose up to 27 degrees in Seoul, 28 degrees in Koksang, 29 degrees in Hapcheon, feeling as hot as summer with high UV rays. It's going to get even hotter nationwide. On Friday, the daytime temperature in Seoul will move up to 29 degrees and to around 30 degrees in most parts of the country. However, daily temperature gaps will stay as wide as around 10 degrees all over the country. Please take care of your health. Tomorrow morning will be very similar to today with Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu at 15 degrees. Highs will move up to 28 degrees in Daejeon and Gwangju, 23 degrees in Busan and Jeju. Frequent showers are expected this week. Showers are forecast around the country both tomorrow and Thursday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.